So this week in geometry, we are talking about triangles. And triangles, as the name suggests, although you may not have entirely thought about it before, triangles are based entirely around the idea of angles. And they all share the fact that there are three angles, and hence the name triangles, tri being the prefix for three. So one way that we classify triangles is based on their angle type. All triangles have some acute angles, angles being less than 90 degrees, as we've seen before, this here. If it's not a right angle, it could be an acute angle. The wedge of a doorstop is an acute angle. A pizza slice being an acute angle. The edges of the star being an acute angle, less than 90 degrees, the same corners in a square. And the Chrysler Building in New York City also, if it came to a strict point like that, or at the top of the spire, are acute angles, angles less than 90 degrees. So every triangle has acute angles. However, some triangles have other types of angles too, either a right angle or obtuse angles. And as some examples of obtuse angles, so you can see angles greater than 90 degrees, greater than the square corner here, which is often put with this little square in the corner to show that it is 90 degrees. This roof structure, or what will be a roof structure, is an obtuse angle because this angle here is more than 90 degrees. The front of this stealth jet is well greater than 90 degrees. And finally, the sides and corners of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., all of those corners and these corners here also have obtuse angles. So, as we said, triangles are classified based on their angles. So, any triangle that has only acute angles, such as this one, is called an acute triangle. So, this is called an acute triangle. All acute angles. If the triangle, on the other hand, has a right angle, such as this one, we call it a right triangle. Because it has one right angle. And finally, if the triangle has an obtuse angle, like this one here, it's called, you guessed it, an obtuse triangle. So, if you haven't already, take a second to pause the video and write down these three definitions for three different ways that we classify triangles. Acute triangles have all acute angles, right triangles have one right angle, and obtuse triangles have one obtuse angle. And come back when you're ready to go. So this is one way of classifying triangles, which is by their angles. We have a different way of classifying the same triangles, and that is by the lengths of their sides. And this is not separate from these classifications. Triangles are classified by their angles and by their sides. So, if we start looking at angles by their sides, we can see that there are some triangles where all three sides are going to be equal. This is called an equilateral triangle. Go ahead. I'm going to ask you to pause the video several times as we go through these. If you need to, pause the video now to write down that a triangle with three equal sides is called an equilateral triangle, and draw this shape into your notebook also, including these hash marks. These are called hash marks. Anytime that you see hash marks that are the same length, of the same number, and of the same color, that means all sides marked with those hash marks are the same. These three hash marks are the same length, the same color, and they're in the same number. There's only one hash mark there, so therefore they're all equal sides. The second type of triangle that we have is one where only two of the three sides are the same length. That is called an isosceles triangle. Be very careful with how you spell isosceles. And so here we can see that there are also two sides with hash marks. However, these are different colors, and there are two hash marks of the same length there. That means those two sides are the same. We could have one hash mark, we could have 3 hash marks on each side if we wanted, but the same color, length, and number means those two sides are the same. A triangle where only 2 of the sides are equal is called isosceles. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to, draw this triangle, and write down the definition here, including the correct spelling of isosceles triangle. And finally, the last type of triangle, if 3 sides aren't equal and 2 sides aren't equal, that means, well, the next number down is 1, but basically that all sides are different lengths. That is called scalene. Notice that there are no hash marks on any of the sides of this triangle because none of those sides are the same length. Go ahead and pause the video and write down, along with this picture or another picture where all 3 sides are different lengths, a scalene triangle. And so there are 2 important things about all triangles that we need to remember. The first, as we mentioned, is that they all have 3 sides and therefore 3 angles. It's after all called a triangle, as we said before, tri being the prefix for 3, angle being, well, angles. They all have 3 sides and they all have 3 angles. But what we're going to spend more time this week talking about is not necessarily the classifications of the triangles or the fact that they all have 3 sides, although we will need to know that. It's that the sum of their angle measures is 180 degrees. So when we come into class this week to talk about triangles, we need to remember these 2 things. Go ahead and write this down as the last part of the video lesson. All triangles have these things in common. They all have 3 sides, and the sum of their angle measures is 80 degrees.